Welcome, everyone, to episode 1 of the CDKL5 in Color podcast. I'm Marissa, and I have with me my co host, Amanda. Say hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Hi. Both Amanda and I have children diagnosed with CDKL5 deficiency disorder. CDKL5 in Color is a passion project that stems from us wanting to do more to amplify CDKL5 and to connect with other diagnosed families who might be looking for support out here in the world of podcasts. So, first things first, let's tell you who you're listening to. Amanda, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Amanda Jackshaw. I am mom to Ava, who lives with CDKL5 deficiency disorder, and she recently turned 19 years old. We're out in the greater Denver, Colorado area, and we also live with her sister, who is 15, Eliza. Ava has been diagnosed since around 2012, and we spend a lot of time in clinical research and trying to make her life as meaningful as possible.
Awesome. And I'm Marissa. I live in Connecticut with my husband, Jeff, and our 8-year-old son, Gregory. Gregory was diagnosed as a 6-month-old baby back in 2016. He is our only child, and he is a total laid back, super snuggly love of a little boy. I love sharing our story and connecting with other CDKL5 moms, especially the boy moms. And I'm thrilled to be talking all things CDKL5 on this podcast and look forward to sharing more about Gregory and hearing more about Ava in future episodes. I feel like our children have similarities, but are also obviously, but then are also so different that we're really going to be able to showcase a good range of our experiences throughout the different episodes.
Absolutely. And I should just add that Ava is spicy. She is a lovely, fiery redhead, and she lives up to that.
So I think today we want to talk a little bit about why storytelling matters. You sent me this awesome poem this morning, sort of serendipitously that it came into your Facebook feed. What was the gist of that?
The gist of that poem was how we use our stories to build community and to, find our people and figure out how to support one another and, make life bearable. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say bearable, but honestly, some days are tough with this diagnosis, and it's always great to have people who get it, and it's also great to be able to tell your story in a way that is impactful to those people who don't get it. So I think there's a lot to dive into with storytelling and different ways we can tell our story to different audiences that are impactful for improving our lives as well as helping drug developers make better drugs.
Sure. I think it's hard because CDKL5, it's a rare disease. So, like most rare diseases, you're not going to bump into somebody in the store who has it. You're not going to like find people by chance generally. You really have to kind of seek out other people who are on the same journey that you are. And our community is lucky to have a pretty active Facebook private support group. But if you're somebody who's not on Facebook, I think it's especially hard to find other people who are facing this diagnosis. And that's part of why we wanted to do this podcast, is because even if we're speaking to each other and people are listening, they can connect with us through email and through social media and things. And of course, we welcome people to come and join us on the podcast. But it's sometimes hard to tell your story or share with other people because they're just so hard to find. And that poem was really about also not just telling your story and have it be out there, but having that reciprocity with other people to share back with you, and then building this sort of like, what do you call it? Like a patchwork
Yeah,
of stories
like a
that,
patchwork that connects,
Yeah,
It's yeah. It's
finding
our
that
storytelling
connection.
quilt or yeah,
That's right. We met because of storytelling. Do you
we
remember in
did.
2019, we were both panelists on the CDKL5 patient focused drug development meeting that we had with the FDA down in Washington, D.C. That was the first time that we met each other in person, right?
Yep, it was. And then you actually came to see me in New York,
Oh, that's
um,
right.
a year and a half, but post-COVID. We got
Yeah,
together in New York for kind of another
that's right.
storytelling in a different way
Yeah,
initiative.
right. So you've been around longer than I have doing not only CDKL5 advocacy, but rare disease advocacy. So why is storytelling important for advocacy?
So I think that the heart of why we advocate is because we need things to change. We need better support. We need different support. And it's really becomes ambiguous. Like how do people help you when they don't really understand what it is you need help with? And I know that might seem like, come on, Amanda, everybody gets that this is a really terrible disease, but honestly, they don't get it. Even the clinicians we set with, they see us for 15 minutes. They don't understand what we deal with day in and day out. Nobody really understands all these pieces of a school system, adult adult services become something. There's caretaking, there's support and home for caretaking, there's really trying to get our kids all of the therapies or things we feel they need to make their life bearable, like just to help them be on the same level playing field as their peers, or us for that matter. So I have found that if you can't effectively help somebody understand the goods and the bads of your daily life, it's really hard for them to help you in a meaningful way. And, the best example in CDKL5 I can give is, I think a lot of people focus on the epilepsy piece, and it is relentless. It is terrible. We need help with epilepsy. But there are so many other places that we struggle and need help that is just not there. So, how do we break out of the epilepsy story while keeping it, it's important, we can still keep that, as a pennant on the side, but how do we really help people understand all of the other things that are happening, that really are what affects our life so profoundly every day?
Epilepsy is such a big part. Epilepsy is the first reason you probably got this diagnosis, right? Like my son
Hmm.
started having seizures as a 4 week old newborn. And even though looking back, there were some things I noticed about him, the epilepsy was the first thing that was really in your face,
Yeah.
that like, whoa, something is not right here. And you're right. People don't, even close friends and family don't always
Yeah.
understand. They don't get it. If you don't live this, it's really hard to understand the you said the epilepsy is relentless, but like the caregiving burden is relentless. It is
Yeah.
24/7. It is without respite, it is without break. It is, even if your child's like my son's at school right now, in the back of my head, I'm thinking about him. I'm talking to his pharmacy during the day, making appointments for him. You know what I mean? It just
Yep.
it's never ending. And it
Yeah.
is hard to communicate that to other people.
Yeah. And I mean, I think really deep down, and it's something that you know you really in the beginning think this epilepsy is terrible and we got to
Mhm.
deal with it, and then the years roll on and you're like, this epilepsy is terrible, but these other things are more terrible. Or I think that it's like the little bit of a, you really think if you can be in control and get that little piece of life under control, that everything else is going to fall into place and you're going to be able to move on, and that's just not the reality. And I think our children grow, a lot of things change, yet a lot stays the same. So I think the best way to highlight that and to highlight the way we all manage it and deal with it differently is, to get together and tell stories.
Mhm. So if we think about, when we both were preparing for that patient-focused drug development meeting, we had an assignment, right? We were not on the same panel. There were 2 panels. The first one
Mhm.
was about symptom burden, I think, and that was the one I was on. And then your
Yes.
panel was about what? Maybe
I
like
spoke a lot about my diagnostic journey and actually being in clinical research, and how, there's a lot to this to this
yeah,
diagnosis that isn't related to epilepsy. So I think it
right.
was overall disease and wellness.
One of the things they asked us to do when we were preparing was to really think about the audience. And it was a little bit tricky because in that setting where you're trying to communicate to a large governing body, like a large body of people who have decision making powers, and you're communicating differently than you would to like your child's school. It's
absolutely.
like, your audience really matters when you're thinking about telling your story. So in that FDA meeting, you're really showing the burden because what you want is more treatment options. You want more ways burden can be alleviated, the different symptoms can be better managed. And that is super important. But then you get, to a PPT meeting. Well, that's what they're called in Connecticut. I don't know if that's what they're called for you, an IEP meeting.
Yeah, we just say IEP.
So do you go to your IEP meeting and you have to do this balance of sharing the challenges, but also encouraging the team to say, but my kid is worth it. It's this balance of helping people understand the challenges and the severity, but also not throwing their hands up and being like, oh, well, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but being able to say, but here are things that can be done. Here is what their rights are, what they're deserving of. My son is just as deserving of a education that's meaningful for him as anybody else. And your audience really changes the tone and the content of what you're saying. And also, there's this element of a call to action sometimes. So, when we do storytelling, like we've done a lot of storytelling recently in the past years for fundraising. And so, you're telling your story because you want there to be a certain outcome. Um, and that's something that I don't think people always think about when
right.
they're sharing. What do you want people to get out of listening to you?
Well, and how are you going to keep them engaged?
Right.
Right? Like we live in a fast world and everybody's busy. So it's the art of storytelling, and I think you hit the nail on the head though. It's just really that our loved ones are worth it. They're worth a chance to shine and have the same opportunities as the rest of us. And I'm 19 years at this, and at the beginning of this journey of mine, Ava was not diagnosed. I was looking everywhere, and it was not easy. We had a lot of bloggers at that point in time, but social media was not. The iPad came around when Ava was 4, so in the younger years, I used to think a lot and think a lot about those moms who had all of this going on, and they still had to go to the library just to learn about their child's diagnosis. And you know what? They did it. They found a way to do it. They found a way to advocate for us to have access to, home and community based services through the Katie Beckett waiver, all of that stuff. So I feel a little bit like storytelling is probably the most effective thing we can do as advocates that actually produces something tangible that makes our life better. And that might sound cliche or weird, but you know, one thing we're in control of is making sure the world can hear our story in a way that engages, that gets other people to act for us. So thank goodness I don't have to go to the library because
So,
packing up Ava and trying to get her just to like maybe have her library manners would be, a stressful encounter.
right. Oh my gosh. No, the world is changing fast. Even when Gregory was first diagnosed, I didn't have a smartphone. I just got a smartphone back then. So I didn't have internet on my phone then. I didn't have to go to the library to get the internet, but I could
But
do it from my
still,
home. But still, like
yeah,
things move really fast. It makes you wonder what 5 years from now will be
yeah.
in terms of how people are communicating and access, especially with AI and all of that.
Yeah, it's exciting and terrifying all at the same time,
Hmm.
uh, to think where we might be.
I know. Well, I hope that we'll be able to have a lot of different voices from our community come and
Yeah,
spend time with us on our podcast. If you're listening and you're interested in coming to chat with us, we would love to have you. You can send us an email, you can message us through social media, and we will respond. Even when Gregory was first diagnosed to now, feel like I see such a broader spectrum of what CDKL5 can look like. Even in the 8 years that I've been around, it feels like there's just
yeah,
more variety in people's experiences and kids presentations,
yeah,
and I'm not totally sure why that is. There's probably a lot of different reasons for why that is, but it's been really cool, when you read this diagnosis on the internet or whatever, there's a reality there
yeah,
to what can be expected. And I feel like my son is a reflection of what you might read, which is fine. But I feel like I see a lot more kids doing a lot more things than I would have seen 8 years ago,
Yeah.
which is cool.
It is cool. I think there's enough information that providers, doctors and stuff make better decisions as well. But I think it's always good to hear just personal stories and get that perspective of how people are handling and living with CDKL5 now that, I mean, diagnosis is so easy and so early.
Yeah. It's really early. I mean,
Yeah.
we see most people are getting, I mean, we were diagnosed at 6 months old, which felt early, but we see people getting diagnosed at like 8 weeks old now a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, seizures happen so fast with CDKL5, and genetic testing is so much more accessible that you're seeing little ones. And as someone who had a diagnosis given when I had a little one, it's almost unbelievable to hear your little one, your baby, who hasn't really been expected to do much of anything yet,
It's
a potential that, what this life might be for them. It's really hard. So,
yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Well, good. I
Well,
think we are thrilled for this podcast to finally go live. It's been something we've been talking about doing for a long time, and I think it's exciting to get started. We'd love to connect with people who are listening to us, so please follow us on social media, leave a review of our podcast if you can. Email us your thoughts or if you want to be on the show. And everything you need, all the information you need to get in touch with us is going to be in the show notes.
I look forward to hearing from more of the community and to chatting with you, Marissa.
Yeah, me too. All right. Thanks, Amanda. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll follow us on social media at CDKL5 in color on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and visit us online at cdkl5incolor.com. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to chat about? Would you like to be a guest on our podcast? Email us, cdkl5incolor@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Until next time.